Okay, so I wanted to give you some feedback on your breakfast project, and hopefully that feedback will give you an indication of you know what to do to improve your grade. Keep in mind some of this may be based off of if you miss some milestones. So like not like anybody miss those. Actually, maybe some people miss some of the milestones. So basically, for each milestone you missed, I believe it was 10 points that's deducted from the grade. Um, so just keep that in mind that that may be part of that might be part of what's going on with the grade. So let me give me 1 second here to open up the actual assignment and make sure I'm correct that it's 10 points for each. POV and breakfast. Um, yeah, I think so. I don't remember if I actually put that in here in the text, but that was the way I had been weighting it. Is basically for each milestone that you miss, it's 10 points off the grade. Um, so let's go ahead and look here and see what we got just as the final. Now, a lot of you submitted a revision already, which was just based off of what we had. And so I'll look at the revision, and we'll talk a little bit about what's working, what's what could still be working a little bit better. Ali, I think based off of your revision, this is working really well. I like that you get us a little bit closer to the objects. We definitely see a lot more going on with this table, and there's some really neat stuff going on here. The breakfast itself looks really good. The things that give it a little bit more time. Love the Ninja Turtle cereal. Um, so the things that I kind of notice is like very small nitpicky things, but like how sharp this edge feels around the coffee cup. Um, I think a little bit of weirdness to me is going on outside the window. I'm not necessarily sure what's happening out there. If this is reflections or if this is actually an image outside the window or what's going on. But there's like these really bright headlights out here that like I kind of just want to see something going on out there, and I can't really tell what's happening. If it's a nighttime scene, I'm not really sure that the room kind of reflects that being completely night. Well, maybe it does, but it's not really reflecting the idea that um, that if it is completely night, like where some of this light is coming from in the wall and in these corners. But again, that's kind of nitpicky. I think overall this is working really well. I think you had your first camera, which stayed a little too far away from everything, and now I think this one kind of gets maybe a little too close and like rotates around a little bit. So like it's neat to see the actual individual features, but I think you may have a couple too many keyframes, and so like I like how close we get to the breakfast here, but then we kind of do this like quick motion here that's a little bit kind of gets you a little bit dizzy, and I think that some of that we could just reduce some keyframes and help a lot with that. Um, Overall, though, I think that it's looking really good. You got some really good models in here, and you got some really nice textures in here. You lose a little bit of resolution here, and you kind of see that there's like some pixelation going on, and that's just gonna kind of come with practice of finding you know better textures or making this tile a little bit more. But overall, looking really good, and it's I think a big improvement over the original. You got a lot of really good assets in there, so great work on that. Okay, Annie. Let's watch through this one a few times. Okay, nice. So, a couple things I notice. Um, let's just pause here. I think your breakfast table looks really good, and so I hate that we just kind of like brush past it kind of quickly. I almost feel like you focus in at the beginning. You spend a lot of time on this picture in this area here, which isn't quite as impressive as just what you have going on the table. Um, like the tiles, I think a lot of your models are good. The kitchen countertop gets a little simple. It's kind of a box, but the sink is a good start. It's a little too reflective, I think. And I think that this is a little too reflective for the frame. I think the glass looks nice, but if this is two different pieces, I would make the frame a slightly different material that's not quite as reflective. And my other note is like the picture outside here is nice, but it feels like it's at the wrong angle. You feel that like it feels like the ground is kind of sloping upwards, like we're looking at the side of a hill instead of the ground like kind of traveling away from us. And some of that just comes from the fact that you're trying to represent some 3D space with a 2D object, and sometimes it's just hard to make that work well. We recognize little things in the parallax that's not happening, like the fact that these leaves aren't moving in front of the grass. And there's also like some slight differences in sort of the exposure quality. Like this feels overexposed, but in comparison to how bright the room is, I wouldn't like it. There's just a little bit of a disconnect, and even like a saturation change. That's just a hard thing to balance right with compositing, and so like, just play with that one kind of a little bit to try to get the brightness in here and the brightness out there to feel right. But the biggest thing is just the perspective of it. It's like it's kind of in the wrong perspective. I like the texture on the wall. And I like the texture on the floor. Again, I really just like the breakfast table most of all. You overlook, like we kind of miss out on the coffee cup, which is done really well, the spoon, which is done well, the bowls look nice, the fruit looks nice, the box looks nice. The milk looks a little bit metallic, but otherwise, like we're looking pretty good. Like in this angle here, this is a pretty nice looking shot. Um, I'm a little thrown off by how wide the legs are here at the top. Like they feel this is a strange table to me, and I think some of the proportions of the table maybe make it feel like a little bit of a kid's table in comparison to how high the countertop is and everything. But overall, this is working pretty well. So those are just some of the notes that I would give you as a takeaway to kind of look at. Okay, BJ. Yeah. So you got some really nice things going on in here. First, kudos on the very simple camera animation. I think you could possibly play with. Um, well, no. First, let's talk about what's working well. What's working well is everything on the table. All of your models are nice. The table and the chair models are nice. I feel like this could still use a touch of refinement. I don't necessarily know. Like this feels like it got a little blobby shaped, and I would expect to see like some sharper corners, whereas it starts to round off a little too much. But maybe that's just my expectation of what it is. And then the other little thing is I would say that some of the corners on the chair feel a little sharp to me, and I think that may just be faceting in the model itself. These pictures in the back, I like the addition. They kind of feel like there's some pixelation going on in them, but I also think it could be neat to see some of these a little bit bigger or something else going on the wall. Spoon, fork, plate, all that stuff looks really good. But the wall just feels kind of flat and uncared for. Again, I like a lot of what you have going on in the room. There's that implied other rooms by the hallway. I expect a little bit of something outside, even if it's just some change in color. But it just feels like there's this like emptiness out there, and we kind of lose some information on whatever's going on up here. I imagine it's sort of like some blinds that you would pull down or something. I like it. It's a very modern and interesting looking kitchen. Again, like these three little lonely pictures here feel kind of strange, so I kind of feel like I want something else going on the walls, even if it's just some trim or something like that. The floor texture looks nice too, so I would also consider, since there's so many so many black objects in here. I feel like it needs a touch more light, um, just to kind of find those shapes. So we kind of lose this edge, you know. We kind of lose some of the information of what's going on right through here. Like, there's just a lot of very dark things in this room, and I don't know. It kind of depends on the angle you're viewing your monitor too, but those will be my main notes. Brandon. Here we go. Okay. So I love how long the video is. Like, I really feel like I get to see everything. Some of the camera motion maybe feels like it's a little. Well, actually, let me watch it here. This camera motion is feeling pretty good. I mean, I think you kind of need to consider what you're looking at. Like, we got a whole bunch of stuff we're not really focusing in on, then we come through here and get into something focused. So I think it's just like this transition through here, like for a long section here, we don't really have anything we're focusing on, except for the reflective floor. I mean, maybe that's what you're wanting to show off. These look really good. I know you worked a long time on those, and they turned out good. Actually, everything on your table turned out really good. Get a little bit of like weirdness in the texture on the side here going up and down, and so that's just playing with some UVs, and we can make that happen. And these areas here are a little sharp on the model, but that's something we hadn't really explored too much yet at this point. Super glossy table, and so we get a little bit of like white out there. Yeah, but overall, it's looking really nice. So my biggest note on lighting for this is that it feels like the primary source of the light would be this window coming in this way, right? Now, we don't ever see behind us, even though we get close a few times. My guess is that it's not the only window in the scene, right? That if we were to look directly behind us, we would see, or if the camera were to raise up right now and look forward, we would see another window similar, right, to this. And so that makes it make a little more sense, but it feels like all of the lighting is coming from directly behind us, because it's casting this like perfect shadow. It's like all of it's coming through that way, and I feel like that's not really accurate to. There's no real lighting come through here, and so it feels like it needs to come from kind of both windows. And so you may have a little bit of a shadow being cast here, especially if the sun is in that direction. And I guess based off of the shadows in the building, maybe it would be kind of casting more this way. But if it were that hard of a directional light, I feel like we would have a little bit harder shadows or a little bit darker shadows in here. So I think you got so much overall light in the room. One, I think I would tone that down just a little bit and get a little bit more directional light. And then I think you need a little bit coming in from this side as well, just to kind of balance it out. So yeah, the lighting just feels like it's inconsistent compared to what we're seeing based off the environment. Like there's a whole bunch of light going on up in here, even though most of that light would probably be coming from stuff bouncing off the floor. So, and like up here around this area, I think we would have a little bit of a darker shadow going on. Like this shadow is darker than what you would have, darker than what you have here. And I think that would be, I think that would work a little differently. So, cat. See, now I want to watch both of them. Let's watch this one. Okay. I like it. I like the camera movement. So you got some really strong lighting coming in here, and you're getting this washout, which isn't always bad. Like sometimes that's what you're going for, right? I think I would probably tone down the reflectiveness of this material here, because we're seeing like reflections from behind us and stuff. So I think that's a little too much. I like the syrup melting. It's kind of a neat little addition. Um, I think this fork model could probably have a little bit more attention to it. It's just a little simple and cartoony. Is this is your coffee cup like the Doctor Who like telephone box thing? Like what? I don't know. That's neat. Whatever's going on here is interesting. Or it may just be the reflective map. I think you got a little bit too much reflection going on the table, and I think we could probably work and get a better wood material than that, even if we just downloaded something online. I like the wallpaper, and I like the models. There's not really a lot of shadowing going on in the room, and I think you have some shadows, because if we look here, we see a little bit of some shadowing going on there. I think it's that everything is so reflective that it's kind of washing them out, and I'm not really seeing any shadows here. So I think that you have such a strong light source coming in through the window here that it would cast more shadows in the room and get more like darkness in the corners and stuff. So I mean, you got some shadows in there. I just think they need to be, I think that they're being watered down by other lights in the room. So I think you need to kind of play around with that. And the back of the chair feels a little strange to me. So otherwise, it's looking pretty good. I like the maple syrup jug a lot. You could probably smooth that and it would even improve it a little bit more. So, and the spoon actually looks really good too. So yeah, all the models are looking pretty good. And what I'm sure you recognize the little seam back there, but that's just you know, these are little things to address just to kind of make it just, you know, it's like we polish one step at a time, and then eventually it all starts, you know, coming together. And so these are just a bunch of little notes to point out. But I really like the little flower, and I like the way the camera works. Like it's just a nice little camera, simple camera move that just shows us a couple elements and allows us to see everything that we want to see. Courtney? Okay, interesting. I think there's a couple things we could do on this one to, and I think some people even mentioned some of them in class. Like your plates are looking neat, but they're very faceted, so I think we could, you know, even smoothing those may do some interesting stuff. You got some interesting highlights going on this, and I wonder if there's an issue with the normals. I like the drawers a lot. I think that turned out really well. I like the garbage can, although I'm not really sure how this part here works. And it's a little bit of a shiny garbage can. You got a pretty nice texture map on the floor, and I think your breakfast table overall looks really good. There's a chance that it may be a little shiny too, but I can't really tell. That may be like faceting, where it still needs to be like smoothed. I like that the chairs kind of have this like, this is a very unique looking chair. It's kind of like a cathedral top thing going on. Overall, looks pretty nice. I think you did a good job at kind of accenting some of the elements that look good. And I think that your lighting in the room overall is looking pretty good. I think it could use a little bit. I almost feel like this light needs to be, this casting the floor needs to be a touch brighter, just to kind of give it a little bit more contrast, but just a touch, so not very much, but just a little bit. And that way we could feel a little bit more of the light bouncing around over here, because it gets kind of dark in this corner. So similar issue that other people are having is just the, you know, we kind of see the forced perspective out here. An interesting way of kind of playing with that is just blurring this image a little bit, and it kind of makes it feel like it's like depth of field. Like if you blurred it from the bottom up to where like about here up it starts becoming more blurry, it'll just kind of feel like that, you know, because it's further away it's out of focus, and that might be a way to kind of play with some of that. But In the end, there's some other ways of doing that, but this is kind of this is what a lot of people do to their first time or first few times around to get the exterior without actually having to model anything. But there's a couple other solutions we could do that would help. Nice looking sink. I like this. We pan past this really quick, but that's nice. And it's some of the few examples of a lot of color in the room. Like the room is not very colorful overall. You got some stuff going on here in the pink, and then we brush past this, and it's like this flash of color, and you got some in the seat too. So it's nice. I think it would be interesting to. Like, it's just a big empty room, kinda. Does it make sense? Like, I almost want to see this one made smaller. We have a refrigerator, a sink, a table. There's no stove. There's nothing to really cook with in here, and so it just feels like a nice little simple kitchen. Look how big it is for not a lot going on in it. So I'd consider even making the room smaller. Like if this were the wall where we start. And that way it just feels like a little bit of a smaller kitchen, because otherwise it just kind of feels like an empty house, you know. And I think the walls need a little bit. You got this trim going on here, but there's a lot of just gray or this like tan color on here. So I think even adding some trim around here or something would be kind of neat. Overall, though, most of the models were really good. Let's see. I'm guessing this is the newest one, so I'm guessing this is. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, let's look and see. We got, and this is David, Ed, and Eddie. And this is looking pretty nice. And that is quite the handsome bagel. Let's watch here. Yeah, I think this is looking good. So a few things I noticed. I feel like the lighting could use a touch more work. An interesting thing to try with the bottle here that I think you could do is duplicate the bottle and scale it down a little bit to where it fits inside of the other bottle. So you got two of them. Make one of them transparent and make one of them this orange color. And so it'll look like you have multiple layers of it, and that will feel like it's, got two different levels of the orange juice. I think you did better with the lighting in this. I don't know if you made many updates, but I don't see as much of the multi-shadowing. You see a little bit of it here, but it's not quite as strong. I think the TV and the TV stand look really good. Some of it we're just getting some pixelation because of the render or like the file size. It feels a little dim. I think we could have cranked up the contrast a little bit in the lighting, and I think we would get a little bit like some of these areas here just kind of fall into darkness. Couch looks really nice. I like this giant snack cake Last Supper thing going on here, and I like the speakers quite a bit. And so overall it's looking good. I think texture wise you got some pretty good textures. I'm noticing some repeating going on in the carpet for that texture, but that's just something that we kind of have to fight with to hide. I mean, it's going to happen. We just got to make sure we we can make it less noticeable. So overall, it's looking good. I feel like the couch model is probably really good, but we're not getting to see a ton of that. But what I'm seeing of it looks really nice. So yeah, looks good. Devin. Okay. Well, let's do open with fcheck. File, open animation. Okay, that's going to take forever. I'll do it with QuickTime instead. File, open image sequence. Control V, Control Enter. Went to the first one, and I'm guessing this is 24 frames a second. Open, give it a second to load here. Okay. Okay, well, while that's loading, I'm going to go ahead and move on to Grady's, and I'll come back to yours, Devin. So, Grady, let's see what we got here. Good. There we go. So, you've actually approached me about this, and we've talked about, you know, some of the very slight things to work on. Overall, this looks really good. If this is your sushi, I think it may be a little reflective. Let me go back and make sure that's sushi. I think that's what that's supposed to, what that is. I guess that's what the chopsticks are for. So maybe make that a little bit. I think it'll have a little bit of a gloss, but it may not have so much reflectivity. Or if it does, it's probably a much softer reflective, like what we have on here. Yeah, these limes and lemons look really, really well done. I think you said something about one of the renders. Yeah, I can see here you get a little bit of faceting going on, so you can smooth that out. Overall, though, this is really excellent. I think you could probably get, like, this is such a great texture that this one doesn't really hold up as well. And so I feel like you've kind of modeled in some planks, or textured in some planks there, but you can tell that there's no modeling for that. So those are very small things, but and I feel like some of this, well, not some of it, I guess because of the way it's sort of set up, it doesn't really feel like, I think you're using probably image-based lighting here. And so that image stays in the same spot in the world, and so we don't feel any of that. We feel some parallax, but it's kind of implied. So the fact that the camera's moving, but none of this stuff back here is changing is just some small issues that, I don't know, it's not even necessarily worth dealing with overall. Like, it's just such a good, you got so many good shots here, like, but that's something that I think is noticeable. So I think you could probably play around with that, even if it's just take this image and composite it in and do a little bit of slight parallax motion to make it feel right in Premiere or something like that. So, did Devin's ever open up? Feels like it's in the process of crashing, so let's keep hoping. These are, well, this one's 17 minutes later, so let's assume this is the one you want us to watch. Oh yeah, I remember this now. It's nice. I think you got a lot of really good stuff going on in here, Jessica. My biggest notes, I feel like the doors feel a little thick. This is an interesting table, and I think that you could take it one step further. I don't know if you're using the mental ray materials, but I think if you took it that one step further and got a little bit of like warping going on through here, which I think you could do is like if you use the thick glass preset or something in the mental ray, the MIA material, sometimes that helps. And so you'll get a little bit more warping. This is a little overly reflective, and then there's whatever's on the ceiling is pretty reflective too, and so that kind of throws me off a little bit. I like your lighting. I think it's interesting here getting these multiple shadows. I'd almost want to see some of those go a little softer. It's awfully hard shadows everywhere. You got some pretty good modeling, and I think as we had said during the, like, this is some nice modeling you have going on here. And we get the impression that there's a whole lot more nice modeling over here that we just never really get to see. So I would consider, playing with your camera and seeing if there's another, slight camera change, even if it's just on top of this. Like maybe you did a second camera and then you put those together. I feel like maybe there's a little bit of stretching going on the bricks. These kind of seem long and thin, not exactly the shape I would expect of the brick. It kind of feels a little bit more like stacked stone. And so that may be something to play around with. I'm not for sure if that was supposed to have a texture on it and just got lost, or if that's just the art. It's a big black canvas. Well, QuickTime's having fun, so you keep thinking, QuickTime. I'll come back to Devin's here in a bit. Okay, let's see. Judy, it's the revision. Let's check it out. Oh my. Nice. And so I see you're playing around a little bit with some global illumination, maybe even some final gather. I think you're getting some really good results in here. I'm not really sure what's going on outside the window. I think some of the models feel a little boxy, and then some of them just feel really awesome. Like these are really cool chairs. But then the stove feels a little boxy, and so does the refrigerator. It feels a little sharp there, and these little edges on the door feel a little sharp, and here it feels a little sharp. At the point in which we were doing this, that's not really that big of a deal. That's something that we could have, and we hadn't gotten that deeply into modeling yet. So I like the garbage can, and I think the little lighting artifacts, like we get the occasional flicker and stuff, and that's a little distracting, but it's not. You got one up there, I think. Let's see if we see it. And so that's just the photons acting up. Like sometimes, and so sometimes, so you're getting like this this graininess in the shadows. You just have to crank some of the values up, and it makes it take a little bit longer, but it works a little bit better that way. So I think that's probably what we're seeing going on there. But overall, this is looking really nice. I think kind of if you could clean up some of the boxiness of the models and maybe crank up those photons a little higher and use the render farm, I think you're probably going to have a really nice piece here. So overall, though, it's looking really good. So okay, Sinya. Okay, how many more we got left here? Not too many. Actually, let me go ahead and stop here and come back with a second video on this.